What is it that is so special about human beings? We call ourselves Homo sapiens. Aristotle said that we're the rational animal. But what is this sapiens? That's the question that has puzzled me for years and years. Why is it? What is it that enables a naturally evolved animal, part of nature, the world of evolution and DNA and brain science and all that? This creature can do something which no other animal can do, and it's very important that we understand just what it is that's going on here, because I mean it's perfectly obvious that human thought, human intelligence is having the most devastating effect on the world, where the temperatures of the planet is going up. There's a mass extinction already underway. We're destroying the whole natural world that created us. We're destroying our own creator. It's an appalling situation. That's why it worries me, and that's why I really want to understand sapience. We know what sapience is. It's thinking, and what's thinking? It's what we know we can do. It's imagination, it's language, it's beliefs, it's desires, intentions, perception, all of this kind of thing, the mental stuff. Animals can perceive and perform and have intentions, certainly. But the difference between us and them is that we are self-reflective. We know that we can do all these things. We somehow have an extra level. And that's what makes us different. We're self-reflective and we're self-regulating, self-controlling, because representation and control are really two sides of the same thing. We don't just see the world, we see ourselves in the world. We have imagination. Okay, but this is all perfectly familiar. What we need is a natural explanation for it. And actually that's not so hard to give. We are the representing species. The only animal, with the possible exception of bees, that actually represent things in a systematic way. Representation is part of natural history. It's one of the defining properties of our species. We are able to represent ourselves and control ourselves. Right. How is it done? Well, it's a problem. It's had the philosophers puzzled. They realized long ago that something like this was going on, and the first thought was, that representation is necessarily, logically separate from the things that it's a representation of. The map has to be separate from the landscape. It's logically necessary. Therefore, if the mind represents, the mind must be separate from the material world. But of course it isn't, and that's a contradiction, and that has led to endless philosophical confusions over the centuries. But of course, that's the wrong way to look at it. Representation is a natural activity. Thinking is a natural activity. It's not. Mind isn't. If you start thinking about mind as though it was some kind of stuff or a thing, you'll find that it's a very weird stuff, a very odd thing. But I mean that's not a productive way to go. You won't understand it like that. And I've thought about this for many years actually, and I can now give you a pretty comprehensive, if rough, outline of how sapience works. First, we have to have a rational, naturalistic explanation of what representation is, how it occurs in nature, how the logic of it. It's very important to be able to define precisely what is and what isn't representation. If you don't get that right, it'll make nonsense of all the thinking that follows after. So that's one. When we've got that organised, we have to consider how it is that human beings are, unlike any other species, able to represent, as it were, in their minds, cognitively. What is this? What is it that we do? Aristotle said that human beings are the mimetic species. We imitate, and that is actually the key to it. Mimesis. Mimesis, as he meant the word, was something very broad. He said all the arts are mimesis, including music and dance, as well as, let us say, painting and poetry. We can do that. We can do all these kinds of imitation and copying. Apes can't. Apes can't dance. That is, in a way, a key to understanding what is special about human beings. We can dance and they can't. And because of that, and because of our ability to imitate one another, we can also imagine one another. And because we can imagine one another, we can imagine ourselves. And because we can imagine ourselves, we have self-reflection. I have to deal with language, because obviously language is of central importance to human sapiens. And what we have to demonstrate is how is it possible to get from a kind of bodily imagination, an understanding of one another that goes with dance and with copying, to a symbolic representation that represents the words with represents the world with arbitrary symbols. These two systems can interact with one another. They can reflect on one another's content. They can control one another. And with that you get a whole new kind of system, a whole new kind of internal process, the interaction of two representational systems to give you a higher level meta-representation. Now that is sapience. Then with that you get the possibility of unlimited internal reflections, you know, like two mirrors. It can go on forever. That is sapience. That is what gives us consciousness and freedom and rationality and responsibility. They all come out of this incredible emergent process that results from two independent systems of representation. The last section, or it might have to be several sections, because this is perhaps the most complicated and the most important part, is what we do with this sapience. You see, I mean, sapience is self-reflection, and sapience can think about itself and control itself. And there's no limit to this. I mean, there will never be a final theory of sapience, because there is no limit to our power of like internal reflection and just chaotic play. We can do anything with our minds, but there are certain basic structures to it, which Aristotle described in terms of what he called the four intellectual virtues, the four faculties of the soul. He called them episteme, techne, nous, and phronesis, and they are actually what result from the four basic structural reflections that you get out of sapience, as I've described it, and they give rise in culture to science, technology, arts and humanities, morality and politics. And there is one more, Sophia, wisdom. Wisdom is what you get from the interaction of nous and episteme, knowledge and understanding. That's what we're really after, sapience, as sapience achieving Sophia, wisdom. So stick with it. That's what you'll get.